My first experience of Rage was in 2011, a few months after its release. I was only a kid, 8 at most, and I remember thinking the cover looked cool, so I convinced my mum to buy me the Xbox 360 version. It had 3 discs back when that was a thing, and I remember thinking that meant it was going to be a great game, because The Witcher 2 also had like 2 discs. So I just assumed the more discs, the better the game. If you gave me a game with 4 discs back then, I'd probably lose my mind. The little I played of Rage blew my prepubescent mind. I had never really experienced a game like this before. I'd only get into Fallout later in life, and sure, I played Assassin's Creed 2 and, as mentioned, The Witcher 2, along with Minecraft, Call of Duty, and any LEGO game I could get my grubby little hands on.
What the fuck is that?
But Rage just felt different. Blowing bandits and mutants' heads off and racing around the wasteland blowing up cars was just something special. It was short-lived, however. Once I got to the Dead City, I was shitting myself so much, I turned the game off and just never came back to it. Rage was always a pinnacle game for me. I was almost scared to go back to it out of fear it would ruin the rose-tinted view I had for this game. But once Rage 2 was released and turned out to be a complete shit show, it really made me rethink how good Rage really was. I was also worried my nostalgia would impede my judgment for this video, but nostalgia can only take you so far before reality starts to rear its ugly head. And I think after finishing both games, I can give a fair and honest take on this series, something absolutely no one has ever done before. Oh god damn it. I'm going to start this video by going over Rage's story. Rage begins with a cinematic giving some background into its world. The Earth was hit by an asteroid, and the governments of the world countered this by making the ARC program, which throws people in tombs to, I guess, rebuild civilization in the future, and from there, this is where the story takes off. It's a simple premise, but a lot can be done with it if it's in the right hands. This was not in the right hands. The weakest part of Rage is probably its story. Instead of feeling like a badass wasteland hero, you feel more like a UPS service for characters that are neither fleshed out or very interesting apart from their over-the-top character designs and mannerisms. Even the voice acting in this game is fine for the most part, but sometimes it's just really bad.
Think you can walk into our house? Take him to the kill room.
After escaping the Ark, you are saved by the first character you meet and main love interest Dan.
It ain't safe here. Get in.
Not really a love interest, but someone needs to make the story interesting. From the get-go, the game tells you that Ark survivors are special, and the Wasteland Boogeymen, the Authority, will pay a big price for any they can get their hands on.
No, Ark survivors are worth a lot of money to whoever hands them over to the Authority.
And they are foreshadowed a lot. You can't take a piss without the Wasteland at the urinal next to you talking about how the Authority kicked his dog and fucked his wife. Like, they really try to set these guys up as something to be feared throughout the game. And as you'll see later in the video, all this hype is kind of for nothing. Characters also don't really hold any weight. You kind of go from one character to the next without much depth or character building whatsoever. The first few missions you do are for Dan, and once you've done everything he wants from you, he says it's too dangerous for you to stay, and you guys break up.
To keep you here. A guy like you is valuable in a place like this. But you're just gonna attract too much attention, and that'll bring in the Authority.
I thought we had something special here, Dan. And you never hear from him again. Not even a drunk 3 AM I miss you text. You never really spend enough time with characters to care about them. Instead, the game ups to send you from pillar to post and cram in as many eccentric characters as possible, instead of building on the relationships you have with already existing characters. And it doesn't even do that well. There's not even that many characters in this game. The extent of the missions is go to place, kill a wave of enemies, come back, go to the next place. There are very few outliers, but this is the main thing you'll be doing throughout the story. At one point, Dan even wants you to deliver a letter to a neighboring settlement just up the road. Like, you seriously couldn't do that yourself, or at least come with me and build on your character?
Just past the hill across the way, you'll find another settlement. They tend to stick to themselves, but they're friends, and they have what we need. Just give this letter to Richter. He'll know what to do.
Are you serious right now, bro? Like, do I? Like, bro, stop trying to be bitch, don't be
The first major settlement you enter is Wellspring. Towns in this game are compact but can be confusing to navigate for the first hour or two because this game gives you no map in these areas. I get no mini map, but there's not even a map I can go to in the menu, so you just end up stumbling around like you've just had a frontal lobotomy. You do a few odd jobs for the mayor and sheriff of Wellspring and change your clothes, which there is only one set of, which you pick at the start of the game, and the options are basically, do you want an armor that defends you, mitigates damage, looks badass, and adds an extra couple inches to your penis, or the other armor which makes cashiers less likely to spit on you and call you mean names. It's pretty obvious what armor I'm going to get. I don't like being called mean names. In all seriousness though, why even give us this choice when the options are so laughably bad? This part of the game also introduces you to its racing mechanics and Bash TV. Bash TV is just killing rounds of enemies for cash. First time I did it, I ended up running out of bullets and I had to kill a Squidward mutant with my bare hands like Mike Tyson.
I was gonna rip his heart out. I'm the best ever. I'm the most brutal and vicious and most ruthless champion there's ever been. There's no one can stop me.
Hooray!
And racing is pretty much what it sounds like. You race against AI cars to get race points to spend on upgrading your vehicle. I did the non-optional race and maybe a few others, and that was about it, because this aspect just did not appeal to me, and I ended up just using a bare bones ass car for the rest of the game. Even when I was fighting against literal tanks, as you can imagine, that went about as well as you'd expect. After helping the sheriff and the mayor, I was asked to bring a sample to a hermit outside of town called Dr. Kvassia. This is another example of cool character design, poor character building. Kvassia examines the sample and says he needs to run some tests on it and asks me to go into the Dead City, probably the most dangerous area this side of the wasteland. And it's just like, yeah, there's an upgrade for that defibrillator in your chest, so you should go get that.
I can give you an upgrade for it, something that might keep you alive longer. But that will require a little effort on your part, and find what you need in the Dead City.
I feel like everyone in this game is trying to get me killed or just assumes I'm a badass because I'm an axe survivor. The only explanation they give for why I'm such a badass one-man army is that axe survivors are special.
Those bandits shouldn't be too hard to take down. Not for you. I hear there's something special about you Ark people.
But if they're so special, how come the authority keeps stealing them with seemingly no effort? Look, it's video game logic. It's fine, but that's all I could think about when playing these parts. I make my way over to the Dead City, kill a bunch of mutants, and this is where I stopped playing the game when I was younger, because I thought the Dead City was scary. But now playing it as an adult, it's just kind of They went really over the top with the gore. There's entire rooms just filled with blood and guts. Like, bro, whose blood is this? Did you just put the entire city's inhabitants' blood in one room? The game does this a lot where they try to shock you by putting like 100 dead bodies in a room, and it just makes you wonder what 13-year-old designed this game and why isn't he in therapy. It works in a game like Doom 2016 because you're literally in hell. And I'm not saying you can't have gore in your game. In fact, it can be pretty cool at times. But this just feels like shock factor for the sake of shock factor. Eventually, I made my way to the boss fight. This is technically the second boss fight so far. First was just a dude on a minigun you have to shoot a few times. This time, it's a giant mutant with the funkiest hitboxes imaginable. And you have to hit the glowing device on his chest, then hit him in his exposed brain. The only challenging part about this fight was watching my missile go through the boss's chest without even hitting him.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Boss fights in this game aren't even really boss fights, they're just fights. I think there's like 3 and all of them feel out of place. Most of the time it's just like a normal dude in a room and you just shoot him a few times and then he's dead. There's no challenge or even any real need for them to be included. I got the upgrade, went back to Kvassia, and he fits me out with it.
Now, just stay still and I'll get that defib upgrade installed. Shouldn't hurt too much.
What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you...
He He talks about the resistance who are fighting the authority and says the sample I bought him is being used by the bandits as an explosive. So I hop back in the car, head back to Wellspring, let the mayor know, do another mission for him where the bandits broke into the well and want to poison the water supply, so I save the day, get the poison, bring it back to Gavasia. This is the last time the super smart science guy is ever mentioned, by the way. Anyway, he says that the toxin I brought him just so happens to be the thing he needs to make a new weapon for the resistance.
But now, this toxin you have so thoughtfully brought for my inspection is exactly what I need to complete the formula.
This is the fruity one they have? Whoa.
So a bunch of bandits in a shack, I'm assuming, make this weapon, but super smart science man can't make it in his high-tech laboratory. Makes sense. Kvasir then sends me back to Wellspring to meet up with the resistance. I get back there and Elizabeth tells me we can't talk in the bar as the authority are always listening.
Kvasir, it's not safe to talk here. Follow me.
So we go into another room to talk with the door wide open.
The bar isn't safe. The authority has ears everywhere, and anyone could be an informant.
This is silly. This is a silly and danger.
And she tells me their leader has been taken to a prison and I gotta break him out. This is the first time you really fight the authority and it's pretty underwhelming. They're kind of like every other enemy we've come across so far, except some have shields and they use laser guns. These big bad wasteland boogeymen are just some dudes that let a prison get overrun by one dude who came through the front door. After saving Captain Marshall, he tells me that he needs data on what the authority was doing with the mutants.
We've still got some unfinished business. Before I was captured, I was en route to the old authority research facility in Dead City. I was looking for some type of proof of what the authority was doing with the mutants.
So I go back to Dead City, get the data, and then Marshall lets me know that the authority are going to catch me if I don't go with them to the Eastern Wasteland, which is the second part of the game.
But we need to leave soon ourselves. Price on your head will only increase if you stay here. This place just isn't safe for you.
First part of the game had a lot of filler. The only noteworthy things that really happened was after saving Marshall, you spend all this time doing missions for characters you don't really care about and won't see again once their missions are complete. I don't even remember the characters' names apart from Dan because he's the first character I met and his name is Dan. Missions feel repetitive, pointless, and overall non-important. It's just a character saying, hey, could you go into this almost certain death situation? And you just do it because they asked, I guess.
Now, I'd like to give the parts to you, but I'm afraid I'd have a small problem. I'm afraid bandits raided my garage not too long ago and ran off with most of the spare parts.
After this first act, the nostalgia was beginning to wear off, and I just hoped the second area would be better. We start off with Marshall explaining how he's also an axe survivor, and then introducing you to his team, then telling you the mayor of Subway Town, Redstone, is a massive dick, and if you don't get on his good side, he'll rat you out to the authority. So you do a bunch of missions for him, including killing a bunch of Russian bandits.
It doesn't have to be this way. Why don't you go back home now and tell that fuck Redstone deal is off?
Why they Russian? I have no idea, but it's awesome. After this, his area just becomes blocked off with authority guards, and I thought he was still going to rat me out even after helping him, and I'd have to kill him, but nope, the game was just too lazy to make anything actually come from that storyline. I then spoke to Lazard, who was a part of the team Marshall introduced me to earlier, and he said there was a decryptor in an act the Jackals, another group of bandits, found. So I went over there, killed all the Jackals, got the decryptor, spoke to Portman, who's the explosive expert in Marshall's team, and he gave me some bombs to blow up the authority's bridge. Did that, came back, Marshall explained that I gotta go to Capital Prime, which as you can guess is just the authority's capital, extremely creative name, upload the data from the ID drive and free all the people from the Axe across the globe. So I got given a badass Gatling gun, went to Capital Prime, killed a few authority mutants and soldiers, uploaded the drive, and then a cinematic plays of a satellite activating and all the Axe come to the surface, and then the game just ends.
That's it?
No real conclusion of what happened with the authority or the protagonist, or what the activation of the axe really means for the wasteland. You can't even play after the game ends to finish loose ends and do side quests, it's just done. pretty unsatisfying end to an already weak story. In summary, Rage's story goes for the safest path imaginable. It goes from character to character without any real time to make you care about them, never letting you become too attached to those you meet, instead opting for over-the-top character designs in hopes it'll distract you from the mediocrity of its plot. And the plot is incredibly mediocre. They set up the Authority so much, only for them to be just as easy to take down as the rest of the bandits and mutants in the story. Every time you take on the Authority, which isn't much, you're basically just coming through the front door, guns blazing with no consequences. Even though they are supposed to be this scary figure in the wasteland, the 3, maybe 4 interactions you have with them are just you kicking their ass with little to no effort at all. All that set up, hearing NPCs talking about how dangerous they are with no payoff.
Be careful. Authority spots you and you'll be hauled away in a flash.
Hey, kid.
What?
Come here.
What?
Come here. Come here, kid. You want some candy? You want some candy? You like candy, don't you?
I don't like candy.
You look like you like candy. Come on, hop in the van.
I'm telling you, I
Get
don't
in the van. Come on.
I'm not.
Get in the van.
And the characters and the Authority aside, the plot itself is just bare bones and uninteresting. Half of what you do in the story has nothing to do with the Resistance or the Authority, and more to do with killing different variants of the same bandits for the 100th time. The plot relies heavily on filler because it knows the main plot can't support itself. Sure, you can make the argument you're helping out the Wasteland and making a name for yourself before you take on the Authority, but why would I care when I don't give a shit about the Wasteland or the characters inside it? The story is just a vessel to guide the player to the next action set piece, even side quests. I didn't complete all of them because they were much of the same thing. Go to place, kill enemy, get thing, come back, in areas you've already explored. There were some side quests that were like protect people with a sniper, which were just insufferable, as the people you were protecting had the health of a wet paper towel, and overall they just weren't enjoyable. I think a story in a game is important. I think characters and world building is necessary for most beloved franchises, but in some cases a mediocre story can be overlooked if the gameplay, world, or combat carries it. So saying Rage has a mediocre story is one thing, but it doesn't necessarily make Rage a bad game. The combat in Rage is probably its saving grace. For the most part, it's pretty good. There are a few different enemies, some charging directly at you with a melee weapon in hand, doing parkour for some reason. Although I was a bit confused why every bandit has a deep-rooted passion for parkour, it keeps the game interesting with bandits jumping off walls and doing flips to get closer to you, also making them harder to hit. Other enemies go behind cover and shoot you with AR-style guns, and sometimes shotguns. They often hide behind cover and throw grenades to flush you out. You have the heavy variants. These bandits are suited head to toe in armor, and you need to shoot pieces of their armor off to get them to reveal their skin, where you shoot to do the actual damage. There's also different variants of these heavies depending on what clan of bandits you encounter. The gearheads, I think they're called, basically just Russian bandits, have heavy variants with gas tanks on their back, which you can shoot to send them flying upwards where they explode. These bandits also have spider bots that can hang off the ceiling and fire at you with a machine gun. You have mutants which run at you much like the bandits and sometimes throw knives at you. There are also mutants that throw fireballs at you. There's the bigger octopus-like mutant who I've dubbed the Squidward mutant, who charges at you and hits you with his tentacle to blind you. You also got the much bigger mutant variant that fires plasma balls. Then the final enemy group is the Authority. Their standard soldiers have rifles and sometimes shields, and later in the game you encounter the Authority mutants, which are kitted out with armor and plasma guns, and the heavy Authority soldier, which are basically the most dangerous heavy variant. Overall, the enemy variety is pretty good. At the start of the game, you'll have mostly melee bandits, but as you progress, there'll be more gun bandits, then heavy, and so on. It's a nice progression. The weapons the player has access to are also pretty neat. You start off with a pistol. It's just a pea shooter that doesn't do a lot of damage unless you're aiming for headshots. This can be upgraded later on by using different bullet types, turning it into more of a hand cannon. Then you unlock the shotgun, which also has its own bullet variant, one of which making it more of a grenade launcher. The sniper rifle, crossbow, and much later on in the game the Gatling gun. And when you have the money, the 2 ARs. Money can be earned by doing the Bash TV minigame, doing side quests or main quests. All of these weapons have their own ammo variants, keeping the game pretty interesting. I didn't use many of these ammo types, instead using the traditional shotgun and sniper combo. However, I did use the mind controlling bolts for the crossbow a lot. That was a lot of fun.
I just want to talk about mind control.
Ammo can be looted from dead bodies, but this is a pretty inefficient way of getting the ammo you need. You can also unlock doors to get ammo on other cool items, but again, not that efficient. The best way to get ammo is to buy it from vendors in the 2 major towns. And this game doesn't give a fuck if you run out of ammo. It's kinda tough luck. You need to make sure you're prepared before you get into a gunfight. I kind of like this part of the game. It really doesn't hold your hand unless you make mistakes, and having ammo be almost exclusively available from merchants gives them a reason to exist. There are also throwable weapons such as the winged sticks, which act like a deadly boomerang, standard grenades, explosive remote control CAS, EMP grenades, and the list goes on. They got incredibly creative with the combat, kind of letting you play however you want, in whatever style you want. The only thing they limited with this is stealth. It's kind of impossible to be stealthy, even though that's why they give you the crossbow. Stealth just doesn't really work, and the map layouts just don't really let you utilize them for stealth, which is fine. I wasn't planning to go for stealth, but kind of weird they try to make it a thing. Combat encounters themselves are pretty enjoyable. Enemies will run at you and you can blow their heads completely off, or throw a grenade and just see a red mist where enemies used to be.
Rev up those fryers, cause I am sure hungry for one. Help! Help! My leg!
The enemy animations and ragdoll physics are also done really well. Enemies will throw their heads back when you shoot them mid-run, cover their faces, etc. If you kill enough enemies, their friends will yell fall back and they'll all start running away. And if you injure an enemy enough, they'll fall to the floor clutching their stomach or run holding their arm. It's pretty good. They throw a wide variety of enemies at you, and for the most part, it's satisfying, gunning down all these enemies and all the different ways you can tear them to pieces. Although towards the end of the game, some parts feel like they're throwing far too many enemies at you, and it just begins to get repetitive. There's not many negatives to say about the combat. The controls did feel a bit stiff when I first began playing, but I was playing this on a controller and I got used to it fairly quickly. And I guess some people might think this combat is repetitive or even boring, but I didn't really find that. I had a lot of fun for the entire duration of the combat, even though I didn't dive too deep into the ammo types. There's also a defibrillator system in this game, so if you die, you have a second chance to come back to life, shocking all enemies near you. That was pretty cool. I haven't really seen that in many other games. There's also no skills or anything to really upgrade, not even armor. The only thing that changes damage output is again the different ammo types. This could be a positive or a negative depending on your preference. For me, it would be nice to have different armors, apart from the initial choices at the start of the game, but it's not a game changer. Overall, the combat is pretty fluid and engaging. It's nice to have so many ways to play with the different armor types and the animations, enemy movement, behavior, and gore. It's pretty top notch. I think this is where the game really shines and can distract you from the lackluster mess that is the main story. Vehicles and vehicle combat was really supposed to set Rage apart from the competition. They really hyped up the vehicle combat and being able to roam around the wasteland. For the most part, it's just not that good. Your first vehicle is the ATV, then the buggy, and then the more armored car I can't remember the name of.
To get your hands on a Caprino.
Hey, sweetie. Why don't you bring that juicy ass over here and hop in Daddy's new whip?
Excuse me?
Who's talking to me?
You can upgrade and tune pretty much every part of your vehicle by buying the parts using race tickets, but the races themselves are pretty boring and I didn't really enjoy them, even going as far as to not do them. As I said, I did a few, but not nearly enough to do pretty much anything to my vehicle. Rage is a semi-open world, and you traverse this world mainly using your vehicle, and sure, there's some jumps you can do and mini games like blowing up bandit cars for cash, or collecting meteorites, but for the most part it's just a boring drive from A to B, without much in between. Vehicle combat is also pretty mundane and barely utilized, at least not until late game. Sure, every time you go out bandit cars attack you, but you can pretty much just keep driving and they'll lose sight of you. When you do get into combat, it's just holding down A to fire your miniguns until the car explodes. The miniguns auto-lock onto the target, by the way, so there's no skill involved. The missiles do a lot more damage and take a little more skill, but not by much. The vehicle combat pretty much boils down to, if you're behind the enemy car, you win. There's also extra things you can use on your vehicle, like a shield or landmines, but you'll very rarely be using these. Just stay behind the enemy's car and keep it in front of you and you're fine. The cars themselves handle okay. They feel very light, even though you're driving a kitted out car with missiles. Some say the driving is clunky. I didn't really find that, but it's not perfect. Overall, the vehicles and vehicle combat is pretty disappointing. I remember it being a lot better when I was a kid, but I guess I was wrong. It's not terrible by any means, but it's very basic with not a lot of skill or thought behind it. So Rage is a game with a mediocre story that doesn't immerse you into the characters, world, or plot, instead focusing on quantity over quality and over-the-top character designs. Its combat is surprisingly good, has good variety and playstyles, and the vehicle combat is just meh. Yet I still find myself really liking Rage. Maybe it's nostalgia, to be honest it probably is, but I still just really enjoy this game. It's almost like a guilty pleasure for me. I can see the flaws in it, I don't even really like a lot of parts in it, but I still came away thoroughly enjoying it. And I think that's the same for a lot of people who played Rage. It's nothing special, but you just come away from it happy and satisfied. Rage isn't a bad game, but it's not really a good game either. It's pretty average and mediocre, and to be honest, being mediocre is usually worse than being bad, because being mediocre just makes you forgettable. But not Rage. Rage has stayed in my mind for the past 13 years, and coming back to it didn't ruin it for me. In fact, it gave me an even bigger appreciation for the game. Sure, it didn't hit the mark on a lot of things, maybe even most things, but it still left an impact. Considering everything I've criticized about the game, it's probably a 6.5 out of 10, but personally, just for me, it's a lot higher. Rage 2 came out in 2019, and I was interested in how it would turn out at first. More so because I was like, hey, they made a sequel to that obscure Xbox 360 game I played when I was a kid, and not because I was genuinely hyped for another Rage game. I don't think anyone really was. I'm more just hard about it, was like, cool, hope that's good, and if it got praise, I'd get it. Spoiler alert, it wasn't good and I didn't get it. Well, until like this year where I picked it up on sale. Rage 2 released in a state. It ran about as well as Usain Bolt with no legs. Constant crashing, lagging, bugs, sometimes didn't even start on PC. There was even an issue that still persists to this day that completely breaks the game. And not like a Reddit mentality of my character took a piss and there's no visible piss puddle on the ground, this breaks the entire game. No, like this actually breaks the whole fucking game. At the very last mission, if you quit the game, fast travel, even die while traveling to the mission marker, the mission disappears and you can't do it. It becomes completely unbeatable unless you have a save before the character gives you the quest. And I ran into this bug and was panicking because I've spent like 2 weeks working on this video and beating these two games just for Bethesda to bend me over and give me a thorough and precise ass fucking. Can you imagine how anticlimactic this video would be if I couldn't even tell you how this game ends? Anyway, I managed to find a save before the character gave me the quest and went straight to the marker. But what the actual fuck? This game came out 5 years ago. I went into this game with low expectations and still came out disappointed. Not only did I have to deal with constant crashing on startup and in the middle of play, but I also had to deal with the most boring ass campaign and world I've ever had the displeasure of playing. Like seriously, it's bad. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me explain to you why Rage 2 fails at just about everything it tries to do. I'm going to start with the story of Rage 2. It's nowhere near as important as the first game, but I'm gonna do it anyway. The game opens up with a cinematic that explains the ending of the first game and tells us how, when the Axe resurfaced, ecopods fell, giving life back to the wasteland.
The ecopods came tumbling down, all premature, pouring life back into the barren lands.
Also turns out the Authority wasn't really defeated and just went underground, where they became stronger and stronger and are now making a comeback. After the cinematic, you get to choose between a female and male character, and then it throws you right into the action. You grab your gun and wing stick, then we're introduced to Lily in this really weird character screen, which gives us her age and general info about her with a voiceover explaining who she is.
Lily, the closest thing I ever had to family. We grew up here in Vineland, raised by her drill sergeant of a mother.
You know, instead of actually learning who she is as the game goes on, we're off to a great start. We fight the Authority soldiers, which have been replaced from actual soldiers to armless things with jetpacks, because I guess a walking chicken drumstick is more effective than a highly trained soldier. As we make our way through Vineland, we come across this massive mutant, and a ranger called Josy comes up on his bike and immediately gets his head bitten off. And as you would have guessed, the main character and Lily are just devastated by this.
So much for Ranger Jersey.
He's not gonna defib out of that.
So much so that they just immediately decide to steal Josy's armor, you know, to honor his sacrifice and to flex on the Authority. I keep fighting through the waves of Authority drumsticks before meeting Aunt Prowley, who's the adopted mother of our main character. She's like a super badass soldier. I'm sure she'll last ages in this story.
That's Jersey's armor.
Jersey, they killed him.
So much for Ranger Jersey.
After some dialogue, General Cross is introduced. He was also the guy speaking in the beginning cinematic. He's like the main bad guy, which we didn't really have in the Fast game. He's basically 99% robot with just this bold, shiny human head. I then get grabbed by a giant mutant, get saved by Prowley, and then watch General Cross stab and kill her immediately after meeting her. After waking up, I'm electrocuted by Lily for some reason.
Fuck's sake! I was conscious!
I then go to talk to a hologram ghost of Prowley, who somehow knew I'd survive and also be a ranger.
Walker, if you're seeing this message, it means we've been hit harder than ever before. I'm likely dead, and Vineland is laid to ruin. It also means that you're the only living ranger.
She explains to me about Axe and tells me to get into one, and this is where the game lets us know the purpose of Axe. Give you new abilities or weapons. I kind of like this, I think it's a cool concept, but if you're not interested in exploring the incredibly boring world, you don't get any of these cool abilities or weapons, so it could have been a really interesting way to reward the player for exploring, but unfortunately it turned into more of a chore than something cool to work toward. This act gives us a dash ability and lets us test it out with a mandatory training simulation that will occur every time you unlock a new ability. Fun. I then go back to Ghost Prowley. She talks about Project Dagger, which is the failsafe for if the Authority returns, and for us to commence Project Dagger we need the help of the old crew. John Marshall, Lusum Hager, daughter of Dan Hager, which is kind of awkward, and Dr. Cavassier, because he played such a major role in the last game. After our main character makes a few jokes about his dead adopted mother to her grieving daughter.
Your mother is no nonsense, even from the afterlife.
Too soon, Walker.
Wow, man. Damn.
I headed back to the courtyard and was given my very own car that talks for some reason.
No, I look good, but I drive better. Let's you and me go for a spin.
Here's a little bit of advice if any of you watching want to make a game. Please don't make the car talk. I swear every time it spoke, I wanted to turn the game off. It got really irritating. Once I got into the wasteland, I was tasked with finding whichever character I wanted first. Each having like 3 missions, so in total there's like 10 missions. And the game knows if you can just do those missions, it'll be over way too quickly. So to unlock the missions for the characters, you have to do different open world quests that give you experience with them to then do their missions. For example, every time you clear a bandit den, you get more experience for Marshall, or a roadblock, more experience for Hager. The game is again forcing you to partake in its world to progress, which would be great if the world wasn't blander than plain rice. Anyway, you do the missions for these characters who send you on quests, some of these characters having the most hideous designs I've ever seen in my life. Rage1 went OTT with their character designs, but they were at least good. These are just hard to look at. And to not bore you with the details, I'm just going to go straight to the last mission. You roll up to the Authority base with the tank and get inside, using Cross's DNA. And then Cross is like, that was pretty dumb, you don't think I'd notice another Cross entering the base?
But surely you did not think it would go unnoticed that another General Cross had entered my base.
Which, to be honest, is really true. This is a shit plan. So we fight our way through the base with the tank, then on foot, till we get to Cross, who fights us with a giant mutant. We beat that thing, then stick a virus in Cross's eye. He then goes, psych, Cavassier gave you the virus knowing you'd die too.
The nanotrite virus! To think Dr. Cavassier sent you to administer it, knowing that it would surely kill you too.
breathes all his germs onto us, so we get infected as well, and as we're dying, Lily saves us, brings us to Kvassia, makes him cure us, then we just wake up and everyone's like, you still got work to do. And that's it. A somehow worse story than the original game. Like, really, really bad. And extremely short for a AAA full-price game. They really learned nothing from the first game when it comes to story. Characters are non-existent. They try a few times to make you care about deaths, but you hardly know the characters, so you just don't care.
Ulo. She's dead.
God damn. I'm gonna miss her. Adios, I guess.
On top of this, the character we play as has the personality of lead. Like, nothing he says is funny, and he makes a joke out of basically everything. And when he does try to be serious, it's just laughable. They really should have just stuck with the silent protagonist. Every time we do talk to the characters, it's just info dumping us and sending us on another quest, which are all the same. Oh, go here and kill bandits or mutants or the Authority. And the Authority is in this game less than the first game. There's even a point where we fight Cross before the final boss fight, and we just kick his ass easily. And he's just like, damn, oh, okay. Next time won't be so easy.
You and I shall meet again.
When I've just seen him kill Prowley, which is meant to be this decorated war hero badass, and just dog walks everyone. There's no tension, suspense, you don't care what's going to happen next. And even if you did care, as soon as you get into it, the game ends. Or you need to do boring side content to access the story. It's just painfully bad. Like the first game, the combat is probably its best and strongest quality. Where it differs from the first game is it takes away the different ammo types and instead focuses on upgrading your weapons with the weapon points, and there's also a lot of skills to upgrade in this game. You got your weapons, your vehicle, your projects that have different classes like exploration, and your ranger abilities, all needing different points to upgrade them. Rage 1 was lacking a skill tree or any type of real progression, but to be honest, this is a bit too much. There's a lot of different things you can upgrade and level up, and it just becomes tedious, and the skills you get from upgrading aren't even that good. The combat itself is pretty good though. It's fast paced and action packed, with a lot of different skills, throwables, and weapons to use on the enemies. The animations aren't as good as the first game, and neither is the gore. The first game was a lot more gritty, this game is a lot more arcadey, and every bandit has an infinite supply of hair dye for some reason. They really try to make this game stylized. It reminds me a lot of Far Cry New Dawn, and we all know how that turned out. Enemies will mainly just shoot at you and sometimes rush you with melee weapons. The melee enemies also just spam grenades, hitting them like baseball bats towards you. And when I say spam, I mean spam. There's so many explosions happening at once, like you're on the beaches of Normandy. This is also a bit much. I know they wanted to make combat as action-packed as possible, and explosions equals action, I guess. But just chill, please. Enemy AI is also as dumb as rocks. Half the time they don't even try to seek cover, they just stand there firing at you, if they even see you, because every enemy in this game is short-sighted. The weapon progression is also weird. You get most of your weapons from Axe you need to find in the Wasteland. I think you get one gun from the actual main story past the opening, which is a shotgun, but the rest you need to find, and I really did want to find them. And I did a lot of the side content at the start, but got bored incredibly quickly. So I never got past the shotgun, which was fine because this game's as easy as your ABCs. There's ammo and health everywhere. You can take most enemies down in a few shots. Bosses are stupidly easy, mainly boiling down to shoot the glowy thing till it dies. This doesn't really give much use to the merchants, which sell the basic ammo and health infusions, but also sell walled info like the location of Axe and stuff like that, and that's fine. But this game seems to really want you to explore, but then gives you the option to just buy info. Overall though, combat is good. It's fast-paced, engaging. Sending enemies flying with the shatter ability or your shotgun is pretty cool. You also have a rage mode. It's not called that, I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically a mode you get from killing enough enemies, and it lets you do more damage and heal faster. It's basically the same thing that's in God of War, so that's super fun. The wing sticks make a return and are fun to use. Grenades basically do nothing now. Every time I try to use them, enemies just sprint away from the grenades, or they do like barely any damage. Even with the combat being so strong though, it doesn't keep you engaged when you're just doing the same thing over and over and over again. You just can't support a game like this with combat alone, and it feels like they really wanted the combat to carry it, and it did for a while before buckling under the weight of the ginormous piece of shit that the rest of the game is. The open world is just bad. They try to make it interesting with different environments around the map, like the desert, swamp, jungle, but that's about it. There's just nothing going on. You might see a wandering trader or a couple of other cars if you're lucky. For the most part, you're just driving from A to B in the most boring and tedious way possible, with the odd annoying quip from your car, and then on your journey you'll see a question mark, investigate it, and it's the 100th bandit den or roadblock or fueling station, all copy and pasted, all the exact same with the exact same enemies. It's like your run-of-the-mill Far Cry game or any generic open world. So much content, but it's still empty. When you go into enemy dens, you have objectives, usually stuff like clear out all the enemies, find all the act chests, and storage chests. The game, however, hides all of these without any way to locate them, so after every battle you spend half an hour searching everywhere for a chest with like 100 cash in it. Later in the game you get a skill which helps locate these chests, but why is this even a skill? Why can't I just see the outline of the chests when I use my focus? What fun do I get from spending half an hour looking for a chest? There's also no flashlight in this game, and some of the chests are in super dark areas. The game also insists you explore its world, so much so that the only places you can fast travel is the main cities, which there is like 3 of. So you're driving everywhere through this vast nothingness. A prime example of why this world sucks is I was driving through the wasteland and came across a burnt out car, so I went up to it to investigate, thinking maybe there'd be something like a quest or an ambush or anything. And I was greeted by nothing. There's no random events, no life in this world whatsoever. Most of the side quests just pointed toward bandit dens, and the actual side quests you do get are just as bad. I really don't have much to say about the open world because there's nothing to say. It's just bad. There's nothing of value in it. Vehicles feel a lot stiffer and more difficult to control compared to the first game. In the first game, they were way too easy to handle. In this game, you might as well be steering the Titanic. The driving also has much of the same problem as the first game. The miniguns still auto-lock, except this time they have a cooldown period. The only difference is you use your vehicle combat a lot less in this game. The only time you use it is when you intercept a convoy, which is basically never. They did make some positive changes though. You can now fix your vehicle anywhere for free instead of going back to the garage and paying for it. Races aren't required to upgrade your vehicle, instead just being an extra aspect of the game and a way to get skins. So all in all, the vehicles are better. They just handle like ass and are super slow. Even the boosts are laughable, especially for such a large map. There's also a lot more vehicles you can drive. If it has wheels, you can probably hop in it, which is pretty cool. There isn't much to say about the vehicles, which is surprising because it's where you spend most of your time. They're just very basic with not much to them. Rage 2 is not a good game. Clunkiness, lag, constant crashing aside, it just doesn't offer anything of value. The world is bland and lifeless. The story is beyond mid with no emotion or care put into it. The vehicles and vehicle combat is insanely basic and unsatisfying. The only saving grace is the combat that also has its issues and fails to hold up the rest of the game. I didn't enjoy my time with Rage 2. It's held together by string and duct tape, barely works half the time, and it's just a mess. If I were to rate it, it'd probably be like a 5 out of 10, maybe a 4 to be honest, but I'm gonna give it a 5 because I'm feeling generous today. It's really not worth your time, and if you want to get your Rage fix, stick with Rage 1. So yeah, that's my take on the Rage series. I had a lot of fun making this video, revisiting Rage 1. And even though Rage 2 was a shit show, it was still fun explaining why it's a shit show. If you got this far into the video, I assume you enjoyed it, so why not subscribe? That'd be pretty cool. But yeah, that's about it. Thanks for watching, and bye.